Welcome to the Wealthworthy Podcast. I'm Trisha.
Hi, I'm Darian.
Thank you for joining us. This week we'll be talking about bridging the gap. And this topic is really coming about because of everything that's been going on in America with these incidences, and we're just losing people to a system that has proven itself to be failing, right? Like, we have officers who are acting as they usually would, but that in itself is probably something that needs to change. We need to be able to shift people's mindsets to recognize each other as equals and to isolate the biases that may occur as we are moving in our day-to-day. We really do need to recognize that, yes, we are different in how we interact, how we look, but that isn't a cause for us to treat each other differently. Certainly not in matters of life and death. So we just wanted to have this conversation to kind of highlight what some of those issues are and how we can move forward. So the first thing that I wanted to get into is just, like, what do you see as the issue?
I see the issue as people not feeling like they're equal. Some people feel like they're above other races of people. Specifically, white people feel like they're better than black people. That's the main issue, and people feel like they don't have a voice and they're not being able to be heard. That's why we are where we are right now, is because people feel like they don't have a voice. No one's listening to what they're saying, and no one's paying attention to them in their community, so people are lashing out, and that's the main issue.
Yeah, certainly with the riots that are going on, the protests that are going on, you are absolutely feeling and seeing the grunt of people's voices. Everyone's angry, everyone is looking for answers and looking for justice. I think that one of the big things here is that, yes, we are looking for justice in these last cases that have arose, but we also are in a situation where we recognize that the inequalities in these neighborhoods and these communities are causing certain issues, right? Like, we have a system that just isn't working for the people. And when we add on this instance of the coronavirus, that just magnifies the issue, where now we're talking about unemployment rates, we're talking about the healthcare system. We have just so many different issues that are complex because we have years and years of buildup of the same issues, the same cycle, and people want to see a change. So we really have to figure out how to get to that point. So what do you think is our path forward?
I think it starts with holding people accountable for their actions, and not just current actions. I'm talking about actions back in slavery. You talk about a pandemic, I feel like that's probably the biggest pandemic ever, is slavery, because people were just stripped of everything, their rights, and pretty much brought over here not on their own terms and forced into a land that was stolen from others.
Yeah, I definitely agree that a lot of our issues do stem from slavery and from other people looking for ways to find cheap labor and to capitalize on forcing people to do things for free, right? And when you have situations like that, like there's a long standing history of inequity, and we just have to move away from that and recognize that, like, yes, those evils have happened and something needs to be done to correct it, to really right size what we have today. And I think that's a harder conversation because when you talk about balancing the wealth that we have in the economy, people aren't freely looking to give up anything that they've earned. But the reason that we are even in this predicament is because of those historical situations. So, moving forward, I think that we have to have the conversations, we have to have everyone learning and understanding the issues at hand. And it can't just be on Black people to teach other people the history of what's gone on and just what that impact looks like, because we've tried that. We've tried to share the knowledge, we've tried to impart what the real issues are, but the reality is that if something doesn't directly impact you, it's difficult for you to see the full magnitude of its impact and to understand why people would be as angry as they are, or why they would be demanding certain things that you might not think is fair, or it might just seem more of a like, well, if we have to deal with the cards we're handed today, we just need to figure it out. Like, just learn what you have to, go to school, go to work, and that's it. But when you're already starting it on an uneven playing field, it's definitely not easy to level up to a point that's way surpassed where you are now, right? Especially when we think about people who we consider as making it, they may not be at the same level as other people on their in their fields because they're viewed differently. And that's the same thing that we've seen in these cases, right? Where you have somebody who's interacting in a business the same way that we all do, but now you have something magnifying the issue. Like, he came with a counterfeit bill, and all of a sudden it turns into this big situation when we can argue that that may not have been necessary. So, yeah, we just have to figure out how to have those conversations and how to begin shifting our minds and hearts so that we can focus on what to do next. So, how do you think you can take responsibility for the change that you want to see?
Start with yourself, educate yourself, educate others in your family as well as in your community. Volunteer, start within your own neighborhood. Get familiar with people who hold political seats.
Yeah, if you understand who is in charge of your districts, your communities, then that's a big helping hand in beginning to affect change. I think sometimes we look so broadly at just the president, but the reality there is all of the people on the ground matter to the causes that we're interested in. Because even when I think about different neighborhoods, you have a ton of people who know their police commissioner really well. You have people who know their like all of their individual representatives really well, and you also need to make sure that you're a part of that group that has the relationships with your community. You're writing letters, you're calling people, you're showing up to meetings, you're showing up to vote for things. And that's definitely important for any situation that we're dealing with. But I think too, where you spend your money and how you spend your money matters. So we have to forge a path where we are looking at different things that we can be purchasing from a diverse pool of vendors and shop owners, entrepreneurs, right? We need to be able to reach out to specific Black businesses. We need to be able to recognize and see other businesses that are out there and be able to compete just as well, be able to attract the same pool of consumers. And I think that's one of the things that is a challenge, just being able to attract, like Grant said, like I'm going to buy from different Black owned businesses as a Black woman, like that's normal for me. But I think that when it comes time to buy from other groups and other businesses, we have no, I won't say we don't have any issue with it, but I think that there's, like, we're used to being able to live with the conveniences that come with buying from certain businesses. And so it's just figuring out how to do both. I don't know that, like, I know there's arguments for strictly buying from one area over the other. And I mean, I can't say I disagree, but I think that we do have to be mindful of how we're spending our money and where we're spending it, especially when you think about the history of the Black dollar and just how money is circulating today, right? Like we're in a situation where a great deal of the Black dollar is leaving the community, and we have to figure out how to bring that back, how to reel it back in so that people are supporting their community as well as others, right? Like, I mean, the same way that other communities do. So if other communities can spend 70 to 80% within their community and then the other 20% elsewhere, then I don't see why our community has to be any different. So when we think about having some of these conversations at work or in circles where the audience may be mixed, I think sometimes the message is muted, muffled. You try to be politically correct, right? Like, how do you think people should navigate those spaces?
I think they should navigate the spaces first, just being honest with themselves. And everyone needs to be honest with themselves and just be vocal about how they feel about the situation. I think a lot of times when you talking about these issues at work or even at church or anywhere, I think a lot of times people feel like they don't want to talk about certain things because it's going to ruffle feathers, but that's the problem. The stuff is already out in the open and people don't want to talk about it. So that's why you have the issues that you have. So I think it's just being vocal, being able to have a conversation in a way that people are going to be able to get an understanding of what's going on. But even with that, it still sometimes can be a breakdown because I think, like you said earlier, to piggyback off what you said, people only look at a situation based off if they're going through it or if it affects them directly. I feel like even when you think about the black community as a whole, some people are in it all the way, but then some people try to pull themselves out of certain situations. Kind of like when you think about celebrities, they have a big platform, they make a big impact, but talking to a community or a race of people over the internet is not the same as if you're going out here getting your feet and your hands dirty and being out here in the community and doing what you need to do because they have a bigger reach. So they can do more. It's just all about what you want to do and what angle you want to take. But then on the flip side of that, you have celebrities who don't want to lose that endorsement because, of course, they take care of their family. So you have to really pick and choose your battles and what you want to deal with.
Yeah, it's a tough one because race has become such a taboo topic in a number of circles, and I think the good that's coming out of these protests is just the fact that you need more companies stepping up and trying to initiate conversation, which I think is a good start to have leadership kind of put that in the forefront. But I think just in terms of us being directly impacted by the decisions, the rulings, the like all of the folks being put in jail, being treated disparagingly, we really just have to be conscious of that. And the only way to make people aware of that is to speak your truth. And the truth isn't always going to be pleasant and easy to deal with, but there's definitely no place for you to hold back all of your concerns because that's not how change is made, right? Like that's that real closed mouths don't get fed attitude where if you don't say it out loud, if you're not out there making strides to affect change, there's no change to be seen because no one's going to willingly change a system that's working for them. So I think that you definitely have to find respectful ways to have the conversation, and just because your opinions might not be shared by everyone doesn't mean that your opinion isn't valid. So I am definitely one to say that you need to have these conversations. You need to stand up for what's important to you, and finding tactful ways to go about that is important. So, like, don't go cursing anybody out, but you do need to make sure you're being heard. Okay, so I think the last thing that we really want to touch on is just how to spend your money, right? Like a lot of what we talk about on a platform is just ways for you to save and earn, but you're earning this money so that you can spend it in the way you see fit. And a large chunk of that is just your day to day expenses. So just recognizing where and how you're spending your funds is important. Are there any specific causes or organizations that you've seen out there that you would suggest to everyone?
Buy Black, you can look it up on Google and it'll populate all of the black businesses and things of that nature that you can support. That's a first step. And even just people that you know in your community that already have businesses, you can start supporting them.
Yeah, I think for some of the specific kind of grassroots organizations, definitely looking at the national bailout looking at some of the things that Black Lives Matter has going on. And like in terms of investing, Buy the Block is a good one to look into. It's one that I've started trying to dig into more, just seeing how you can invest in the communities that are important to you. So those are some good ones. But of course, like if there are any organizations like National Urban League where you are able to volunteer, or if you're just looking to donate money or time, then a lot of these organizations are looking for you to spend your time and help as much as you can. I think that a lot of these organizations need as many hands on deck as possible, but just in the situation that we're in now, I think anything around supporting people's health needs, and with these protests, you have a ton of people that need to be built out. So like those are more immediate needs, but just in general, I think there are a number of great organizations that we can all support and give our time to. All right, any last thoughts before we wrap up?
Just want to tell all the listeners, just stay encouraged, keep doing what's right, moving forward.
Yeah, I think that we definitely need to be mindful of our actions and inaction, right? Like if you're not doing anything at this point, if there's something that you don't understand, or you need more insight, or you need someone to help point you to the right direction, then I think that just understanding where to look is helpful, right? Like if you know of a specific organization or specific people that are part of organizations, then it's easier for you to feel comfortable investing your money and investing your time. But you definitely have to figure out what type of action makes sense for you, because I agree with that stance of injustice for one person is injustice for all, right? Like you have to figure out how to get everybody to truly be able to enjoy the freedoms that supposedly come with being here in America. All right, well, thank you everyone for listening, and we will talk to you next time on Wealthworthy.
Bye.
Bye.